Assalamualaikum and good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Animal Nutrition Forum. So today, I will introduce myself. My name is ABDUL Muhammad bin AZMI, and my matrix number is F2B0201. So today, I will be your moderator for this forum. Okay, so today we will be discussing a very important topic in livestock feeding, that is protein and amino acids, the key to growth and maintenance. So before we proceed, I will explain a little bit about this topic. Proteins are also essential macronutrients for animals. They are made up of amino acids that serve as the building blocks for tissues, enzymes, hormones, and many biological processes. Without enough protein or balanced amino acids, animals can grow properly or maintain their good health. Before we proceed, we can our panelists. So joining me today are our knowledgeable panelists. Is Nur AMALINARAIHANA bin Said, Muhammad ANNUR FITRI bin Idrus, and our beautiful young Indian lady, this is TIVYAA anak perempuan THAGARAJAN, that who will share their insights on the importance, sources, and also effects of protein and amino acids for animal nutrition. So before we proceed, we can watch the video about the importance of proteins in animal nutrition.
किसान दोस्तों, आज हम आपको जानवरों की खुराक में प्रोटीन की अहमियत के बारे में बताते हैं। जानवर के जिस्म में गोश्त का अहम तरीन और सबसे बड़ा जुज्व प्रोटीन है। इसके अलावा जानवर के दूध का भी कसीर हिस्सा प्रोटीन पर मुश्तमिल होता है, जो दूध की शक्ल में जानवर के जिस्म से खारिज होता रहता है। इलावाजी खून में पानी के बाद सबसे बड़ा हिस्सा प्रोटीन पर मुश्तमिल है। जानवर की बीमारियों से लड़ने की कुदरती सलाहियत यानी कुव्वत मुदाफियत का इन्हिसार भी प्रोटीन ही पर होता है। जिस्म में प्रोटीन की कमी से जानवर की बढ़ोतरी का अमल रुक जाता है। जानवर दिन ब दिन कमजोर होता जाता है और इसके जिस्म में बीमारियों के खिलाफ कुव्वत मुदाफियत भी कम हो जाती है। नीज जानवर के दूध और गोश्त की पैदावार में भी बदतदरीज कमी हो जाती है। जानवरों की खुराक में प्रोटीन की मिकदार का तयन जानवर की उम्र और दूध की मिकदार के लिहाज से किया जाता है। काफ स्टार्टर में 20% तक प्रोटीन होती है। खुश्क जानवर की खुराक में 12% और दूध देने वाले जानवरों की कुल खुराक का 16 से 20% प्रोटीन पर मुश्तमिल होना चाहिए, मगर इसका इन्हिसार जानवर की दूध देने की सलाहियत पर है। खुराक में प्रोटीन की ज्यादा मिकदार भी जानवर की सेहत और किसान के माली नुकसान का बायस बनती है। मजीद मालूमात के लिए दासान के ग़िज़ाई माहिरीन से राब्ता करें।
So let we proceed with our discussion. So I want to ask, let's we begin our discussion. So I want to ask, who want to start by explaining the importance of protein in animal nutrition? May any of you, maybe Aline or Anur or our beautiful young lady TIVYAA, want to start about the importance of protein in animal nutrition?
Okay, thank you, moderator Harith. I would like to start. Okay, so protein plays a crucial role in animal because it supports their growth, tissue development, and muscle formation, especially in young animals. For adults, protein helps with tissue repair, enzyme activity, hormone production, and also immune defense. Protein is also vital for the reproduction. In females, it is needed for hormone reproduction, embryo development, and milk yield, while it is needed for sperm formation. So without enough protein, animal may experience poor growth and delayed reproduction, low milk production, and reduced product quality. In short, protein is essential for healthy development, productivity and overall performance.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, AMALINARAIHANA. Thank you for the great and clear explanation of importance of protein in animal nutrition. So now we move on to the amino acids, the smaller, which is amino acids, we known as a smaller unit that make up the protein. So who want to explain about amino acid? Okay, thank you for the great explanation from Muhammad FITRI. So it's clear that amino acid balance is just as important as protein quantity. So now we move on to discuss about the protein sources. We have done with Nur Amalina Rehana and we have done with Anu Fitri. So I want to ask TIVYAA, can you elaborate on the protein sources and important deficiency or excesses?
Thank you, Harith. Yeah, I will give the further elaboration for the protein source and protein deficiencies. Protein in animal feed comes from both plant and animal source. Plant-based protein like soybean meal and canola meal are common because they are affordable and widely available. Animal-based proteins such as fish meal and blood meal generally offer higher digestibility and are more complete amino acid profile, but they tend to more expensive too. So, protein quality depends on its digestibility, amino acid balance, and presence of anti-nutritional factors. For instance, raw soybeans contain trypsin inhibitors, but heat processing improves their digestibility. When it comes to feeding, both too little and too much protein can cause problems. Protein deficiency can lead to slow growth, weak immunity, poor coat quality, reproductive issue, and disease susceptibility. Excess protein doesn't increase performance but does increase feed costs and cause higher nitrogen extraction, which can stress the animal's kidney and affect the environment. So, balanced protein and amino acids are the key for good health and efficiency.
Okay, thank you, Divya. That's a very informative answer. So I like to open the floor for each of you guys for reaction. Do any of the panelists or of you guys have thought of or comment on each of the points?
Yes, I like to. I mean, I completely agree with Divya. Many farmers still focus on total protein content but overlook amino acid balance. Even if feed has enough protein, animals can't use it effectively if essential amino acids are missing. Uh,
So any the others? So Divya, what's your opinion?
Yeah, from my side, exactly. This is why modern feed formulation now relies on digestible amino acid values rather than just crude protein. It ensures that both performance and sustainability.
Okay, that's a very excellent discussion. So it's great to see how all your points connect from the biological importance to practical feeding strategies. So now we move on to the Q&A session. So I want to explain this Q&A session. This Q&A session has two sections. So for the first session is each of you guys will get your question. So for the second Q&A session, the question will get for you guys to answer. So for the first question, I this is random. So I want to ask about what role does protein play in animal reproduction? And if you guys can answer for this question. Thank you, Anur Fitri. So for the next question, what are the proteins requirement the same throughout an animal's life? Any of you?
Yes, Harith, I would like to answer this question.
Yeah.
For protein requirement, change greatly depending on age, physiological stage, and health and production goals. Young animals like piglets, cows, chicks require the highest protein levels because their body are rapidly building muscles, organs, and tissues. During pregnancy and lactation, animals need additional protein to support fetal growth and milk production. So performance animals, broilers, dairy cows, racehorse, and fish also require high quality protein to meet their metabolic demands. Older animals need less protein because growth has slowed, but they still require enough to maintain muscle, repair damaged tissue, and support immune function. Therefore, protein nutrient must be adjusted for each life stage to avoid deficiency or waste.
Okay, thank you, TIVYAA. So for the next question, how does protein affect the final quality of meat? Any?
Well, it's my turn, right? So, how does protein affect the final quality of meat? So, protein is a major determinant of muscle development, which directly influence meat quality. Adequate dietary protein ensure that animal develop firm, well-defined muscle fibers, leading to better texture, tenderness, and overall carcass quality. So animal with proper protein intake produce meat with higher lean content and lower fat accumulation. Uh, on the other hand, protein deficiency leads to poor muscle deposition, soft carcasses, and an unhealthy fat to muscle ratio. Such meat not only appears less appealing but also has lower market value. In poultry, insufficient protein causes poor feathering and reduces breast muscle growth to major quality indicators. In summary, protein is essential to production high value high quality meat that meets consumer and industry standards. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nur AMALINARAIHANA. So this is for the last question. Before we end, let's take one final question for all of our panelists. This is a random question I want to ask for each of you guys. So, what is one key practice farmers can adapt or adopt to ensure their animals receive enough protein and enough amino acids? So, any of you guys, this is because this is a random question, so it's open to you guys to answer it.
Okay, for me, farmers should always provide a variety of feed ingredients and avoid relying on just one protein source. Uh, that's all.
Okay, any? Okay, thank you. I'm Fitri. So, what about TVYAA?
Yeah, from my side, I will recommend that using synthetic amino acid or protein supplements when local ingredients are deficient. This keeps the feed balanced and cost effective too.
Okay, thank you, TVYAA. So, for before we end our session, so we will take a look about the role of protein in dairy cow nutrition.
Hi, I'm Jane Kay, a Senior Scientist at Dairy NZ, and this is a feed right video on protein metabolism. In this video, we will look at the different types of proteins that are found in feeds, what happens when a cow eats protein, and how protein affects cow production and performance. So let's have a look at the types of protein found in feeds. A protein is basically a long chain of amino acids. In feeds, the protein content that is generally reported is called crude protein and is often abbreviated as CP. Now, it is assumed that proteins contain 16% nitrogen, so the crude protein content is estimated from the amount of nitrogen in the feed. Crude protein includes several protein groups. These are rumen-degradable proteins, which include soluble proteins, undegradable dietary proteins, undigestible dietary proteins, and non-protein nitrogens. First, we'll look at the rumen-degradable proteins. These are the proteins found in feed that can be broken down or degraded by microbes in the rumen. Of these rumen-degradable proteins, some are instantly available to the rumen microbes, meaning that they are degraded and used very quickly in the rumen. These are referred to as soluble proteins. Now, feeds that are high in rumen-degradable proteins are fresh forages and silage. If we move on to the other types of protein found in feed, we have the undegradable dietary proteins, or bypass proteins. As their name suggests, these are proteins that cannot be degraded by the microbes in the rumen. These proteins pass through the rumen unaltered and are then degraded in the abomasum, with the resulting amino acids absorbed from the small intestine. Feeds that are high in undegradable proteins, or bypass proteins, include fish meal, canola meal, and soybean meal. Now, if for some reason these proteins are not degraded or absorbed, they are excreted out in the dung. These proteins are then referred to as undigestible dietary proteins. Now, there's one more group that contributes to the crude protein content in feed. As mentioned earlier, crude protein is estimated from the amount of nitrogen in feed, so it also includes the non-protein nitrogen compounds. These compounds are not true proteins in that they don't contain amino acids. However, they contain nitrogen, and this nitrogen can be used by the rumen microbes and converted to amino acids, which we will discuss in more detail soon. So in summary, protein in feed is generally measured as crude protein, and that is estimated from the amount of nitrogen in the feed. The crude protein content includes the rumen-degradable proteins, including the soluble proteins, undegradable dietary proteins, undigestible proteins, and the non-protein nitrogens. Let's look in more detail at what happens to these protein groups in the dairy cow. We will begin with the rumen-degradable proteins and soluble proteins. These proteins are degraded or broken down in the rumen to form ammonia. The microbes then use this ammonia, coupled with energy generated from carbohydrate metabolism in the rumen, to form their own protein. This protein is referred to as microbial protein and enables the microbes to grow and multiply. The microbes are then flushed from the rumen through the reticulum and omasum into the abomasum, where the acidic environment kills them and initial protein digestion begins. Digestion continues in the small intestine, and the resulting amino acids are absorbed for use by the dairy cow. These amino acids that are available to the dairy cow are called metabolizable protein and can be used for many metabolic processes, including tissue function, growth, milk production, and reproduction. Now, what is extra special about this microbial protein and why ruminants differ from you and I is that microbes can also use non-protein nitrogen compounds in feed and convert these to microbial protein, which is then available for use by the dairy cow. As with the degradable proteins, the non-protein nitrogens are converted to ammonia in the rumen and then used by the microbes for their own growth. Once again, the microbes also require an energy source, which comes from fermentation of carbohydrates in the rumen. So let's take a moment to recap here. The rumen-degradable proteins and soluble proteins are degraded in the rumen to form ammonia. Microbes use the ammonia combined with an energy source to form microbial protein. Non-protein nitrogens are also converted to ammonia in the rumen and used by the microbes to form microbial protein. This microbial protein supplies the cow with a significant portion of its total protein needs. In fact, a dairy cow can live and produce milk on microbial protein alone. However, there is a threshold to the amount of ammonia that the rumen microbes can use. And if the cow is producing large amounts of milk, she will require protein from other sources, which we will discuss in more detail soon. So what happens if there is more ammonia produced in the rumen than the microbes can use? Firstly, the excess ammonia is excreted out and transported to the liver. As ammonia is toxic to the dairy cow, it is converted to urea in the liver in a process called ureagenesis. Then, depending on the protein requirements of the cow and the protein supply from the diet, this urea will follow one of two pathways. Firstly, if the cow is consuming more protein than she needs, the urea is excreted, primarily in the urine via the kidneys, with a small amount making its way into the dung and also into the milk, which is often referred to as milk urea. In contrast, if the dietary protein is less than what the cow needs, then the urea is recycled back to the rumen, either through the rumen wall or via saliva, and is then used by the microbes to create microbial protein. Generally, this process is well regulated and allows the dairy cow to recycle protein for later use. However, if rumen ammonia levels become too high and too much ammonia enters the bloodstream, this is toxic to the dairy cow and can result in reduced performance, sickness, and even death. Therefore, although supplementation with non-protein nitrogen sources, such as urea, can provide a source of microbial protein for the cow, this must be undertaken with caution and should only be used with appropriate diet control, nutritional advice, and monitoring. So that's what happens to proteins, or non-protein nitrogens, that are degradable in the rumen. They are used by the rumen microbes to generate microbial protein, which is then made available to the cow. Generally, microbial protein makes up about 60% of the metabolizable protein in the cow. The remaining 40% comes from the undegradable dietary proteins, which we'll look into now. As its name suggests, these proteins are resistant to degradation in the rumen, generally through chemical, heat treatment, or due to how the protein is bound in the feed. These proteins pass through the rumen unaltered and into the abomasum, where digestion begins. As with microbial protein, the undegradable dietary proteins are broken down into amino acids, absorbed from the small intestine, and contribute to the metabolizable protein pool that is available to the cow. However, unlike the microbial protein, which has a very consistent amino acid profile, undegradable dietary protein can contain varying amounts of different amino acids depending on the feed source, and can therefore be used to supply specific amino acids in the diet. So, what happens to this metabolizable protein? Once absorbed from the small intestine, the amino acids move into the liver, and in the case of a lactating cow, a large proportion are petitioned to the mammary gland, where they are used to make milk protein. In growing animals, amino acids are petitioned to muscles for growth, and in the case of a pregnant cow, protein is also required for the growing fetus. Now, as always, there are a few exceptions to the rules. When it comes to degradable protein, the amount that is actually used by the microbes depends on both the rate at which the microbes can degrade or digest the protein and the rate at which the protein passes out of the rumen. Therefore, what can happen is that in some instances, some of the rumen degradable protein passes out of the rumen before the microbes are able to degrade and digest it. This then passes to the abomasum and acts like undegradable dietary protein or bypass protein. For example, nearly 80% of the protein in good quality spring pasture is degradable in the rumen, and about 50% of this is soluble protein, so it is degraded very quickly. What we have then is that there is a portion of the rumen degradable protein that is degraded relatively slowly. Now in spring, when cows have a high intake and the pastures have a low dry matter percent, there is a lot of water moving through the rumen and a very fast rumen passage rate. This means that a portion of the rumen degradable protein passes through the rumen and into the abomasum before it has time to be degraded and used for microbial protein, therefore providing a source of undegradable dietary protein for the cow. So in summary, there are several different types of protein found in feed. Rumen degradable proteins that are degraded in the rumen, and of these, the soluble proteins are degraded very quickly. We also have the non-protein nitrogen compounds that are degraded quickly in the rumen and used by the rumen microbes. Then we have the undegradable dietary proteins that pass through the rumen unaltered and are digested and absorbed in the abomasum and small intestine. Finally, we have the undigestible dietary proteins that pass through the rumen and are not digested at all. These are excreted out in the dung. So for the cow, this means her protein comes from two primary sources. It comes from microbial protein, which is formed from degradable dietary proteins, soluble proteins, and non-protein nitrogen sources, and from undegradable dietary protein, which supply a direct source of amino acids. This protein is termed metabolizable protein and supplies the cow with amino acids that are used for many metabolic functions. So by the end of this video, you should be able to name the different proteins that are found in feeds, know what happens when a cow eats protein, and understand the effect that protein has on cow production and performance.
So everyone, that is the final of the video. So thank you for all the insightful discussion. To summarize, proteins and amino acids are crucial for animal growth, maintenance, and also productivity. To ensuring a balanced supply of essential amino acids, also to support for the better performance, reduce waste, and promote sustainable livestock production. So that's conclude our forum on protein and amino acids, the key to growth and maintenance. Thank you to all of our panelists that joined for us today for this forum, and the viewers for joining us also. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to AMALINARAIHANA, ANNUR, FITRI, and TIVYAA. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.